Howdy, folks. This is just a reminder that if you like this content, you can help me out by liking, commenting, and especially by subscribing. And be sure to hit the bell notification so you always get notified whenever I have a new video. Hope you enjoy this.
Today I had the great honor to speak with Jimmy Akins. He's the senior apologist for Catholic Answers, and he also hosts Jimmy Akins' Mysterious World, which is an amazing podcast. We had a great conversation. I'm very lucky to have got a few minutes of his time. Please make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. It really is the best way to get our message in front of as many people as possible. Also, please consider donating to Right to Life, where every dollar we collect goes to help save innocent life. You can go to rtlcnm.org. My name is Sean Scherer, and this is the Right to Life New Mexico podcast. All right, well, I want to thank Mr. Akin for being here today. It's a big honor for me to have you on our show. So, Jimmy, you are the senior apologist at Catholic Answers and also the host of a great podcast, Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. I know I'm a fan of that. I was going down to our office here in Albuquerque and listened to the second part of the Unicorn podcast, and
okay.
that was a great show. So, I mean, I like the two-parters because it gives me a lot of time when I'm on the road driving. So I enjoy that. So, but I'm really glad that you were here today. I know we want to talk about some life issues. So here in the state of New Mexico, you know, we're fighting an uphill battle. So we're trying to get some regulations that, if any, on abortion right now. Currently in our state, there's no law at all restricting abortion. So legislatively, there's only so much we can do. So what Right to Life New Mexico's job is to educate people and try to change hearts and minds. So I know with you talk about things from the point of faith and reason. And that's why I really wanted you on the show today, because one of the big arguments that we hear a lot is that the baby that's inside of a mother is not a baby. And so I don't know how that argument works. You know, I do have a child, and she was 3 months premature. And so, I mean, she came out very small, but she's 9 years old now, and she's happy, and she was definitely a baby then, and she's still a person now. So, kind of from your point of view, what are some of the things that we can do to combat that specific argument, you know, that these aren't humans? Yeah,
well, what I always do is take it to biological fundamentals, because there's a lot of misdirection on this issue. You'll have some folks say that this is a religious matter and that we don't know when the soul is infused into a child and it may not be till birth or something like that. And my attitude is, let's just stick with science, because if someone says something like a baby inside a mother is not a baby, that's just scientifically false. That would be delusional thinking. There is nothing magical about the moment of disconnection, where a baby separates physically from the mother. The baby is a biological organism prior to that time, and I tend to summarize it by saying, look, what is a human being biologically? Well, it's a living human organism. If something's a living human organism, it's a human being. And so are unborn children living human organisms? Well, they're certainly alive, because if they weren't alive, they wouldn't be growing. You know, they clearly have metabolism. They clearly have, their cells are functioning. They're taking in energy initially from the mother, you know, via the placenta, and they're using that fuel to grow their bodies. So they're clearly alive. The next question is, are they human? Well, yeah, they got a human genetic code. They have the genetic code of a human, half of it from their mother, half of it from their father. They don't have the genetic code of a dog or a rabbit or a carrot. So they've got a human genetic code. They're not only living, they're human. The last question is, are they organisms? And well, okay, so we got to think about what an organism is, but basically it's a self-contained complete entity. Like a cell from one of my fingers is not an organism. You know, it doesn't exist as a biological whole, but unborn children do. Now, they may be dependent on their mother for nutrition, just like they will be dependent on their mother for nutrition after they're born. Essentially, a placenta is the equivalent of a breast. Now, technically, it's part of the child, but it's simply the means by which the child gets food. And children do not, they're not autotrophs. They don't synthesize sunlight and turn it into biochemical energy. They get that energy from someone else, and that person is their mother. And before birth, they get it through the placenta. After birth, they get it through breastfeeding. At least that's the historical way it's done. So the mere fact they're dependent on their mother does not mean they are not a whole entity in and of themselves. They are. Each one of the cells of a child has a different genetic code than the mother does. The child is a single, complete, independent organism. It may be temporarily housed inside the mother, but it's an organic whole that if you leave it alone, it will go through all the standard stages and develop into, give it 20 years, it's going to develop into an adult human being. So biologically, unborn children are living human organisms. And that means scientifically, they're human beings. We don't got to get into religion. We don't got to get into anything else. They just are human beings. And we need to give them the rights of human beings. If you're not on board with that, then I'm afraid you've got some rather bad company. I always hate to invoke Hitler too soon in a discussion, but frankly, the Nazis were not on board with all living human organisms having the same rights, and they're not the only ones. There are others in history who don't want to give all living human organisms rights, and frankly, they're monsters. So that's a basic statement of the case as I tend to make it.
What I've always appreciated when I listen to you is you explain things so even I can understand them. So I appreciate that. So I've been the executive director of Right to Life New Mexico for about 4 months now. So I've been in the pro-life movement my whole life. My parents actually started the local chapter of Right to Life in my hometown here in Farmington, New Mexico, when I was 11. Mm-hmm. So I've been around it quite a while now, and I've always heard the same arguments. And the biggest one always is my body, my choice. And to me, it never made sense because, well, it's not your body. But I recently listened.
The unborn baby is somebody else's body. It's its own body.
Exactly. But I recently saw this interview with, I can't remember who it was, but they were saying that, well, there's nowhere else in the world where someone can force someone else to use their body except for, pregnancy. I still don't think it's a valid argument, but this person was debating that, yes, it is a human being, but it's inside of my body and I should be allowed to do with my body whatever I want. So I don't know, like, when it comes to the my body, my choice argument, I mean, do you have a good way of kind of, fighting against that specific argument?
Well, I think that that the fundamental thing to recognize is there's not just one body here, there's two. And so the question then becomes, so if you have a two-body situation, if you have a two-body problem, if you will, how do we navigate that in a way that maximizes the rights of both parties? Now, there are two ways you can get pregnant. One of them is consensual. One of them is not consensual. Mm-hmm. If you became pregnant in a consensual way, meaning you had sex with somebody consensually, you knew this is one of the risks, and that would entail some responsibility on your part. You can't just kill another human being in order to avoid the consequences of something you freely chose. If I freely choose to rob a bank, and someone sees me and can identify me later, I can't kill that person just because it becomes an inconvenience for me for something I chose. Now, having sex is not robbing a bank, but the point remains that fundamentally, if you consented to an activity knowing this was a possible consequence, and then the consequence came about, then you have some responsibility. Now, that doesn't mean lifelong responsibility. You could give the baby up for adoption. That's totally fine. It doesn't have to inconvenience your lifestyle or anything beyond 9 months, getting to term. But you can't just kill somebody for an action that you were consensual in. Okay, so that's consensual reproduction. What about non-consensual reproduction? Unfortunately, this is extremely rare. But there are cases of rape, and sometimes people are conceived as a result of an act of rape. Ethel Waters, the famous musician, the famous African-American musician, was one of them. Well, okay, I agree that in a case like this, you don't have responsibility for the consequences of your actions because you were forced. But what's the loving thing to do here? Is it an act of love to kill the child? Or is it an act of love to carry the child for 9 months? And then, if I understand it can be painful to have a child of rape, by all means, give it up for adoption. Do whatever. But the loving thing to do, the human thing to do, the humane thing to do is not to kill somebody. It's acknowledged this is a traumatic experience. It's acknowledged you are not responsible for this. It is acknowledged you don't need to be burdened by this for the rest of your life, and you don't need to be. All you need to do is be a person of love and keep the child for 9 months until it's born and allow that child to live. Because everyone, regardless of the sins of their parents, including the sins of their father if he was a rapist, everyone who's alive deserves to live.
No, I agree with that. And, in our state and in a lot of states now, there's even these things called safe haven baby boxes. So this is a anonymous way for a mother to, surrender her child. And, I believe we have 7 of them so far in the state of New Mexico. And we've surrendered, and I believe there's already been 5 babies saved by these. And those are babies who probably would have ended up in trash cans, because we have a lot of evidence here, again, in New Mexico, caught on security cameras of people throwing newborn babies into trash cans. And so I believe, there are other options. And I know for me, coming from a faith perspective, for me, my having a baby was the point of me getting married, was to procreate and to, and raise the next generation. But I understand, in our movement, not everybody has the same, religious beliefs that I do. I was raised in a very Catholic family, so it is what it is. But
you'll notice in my arguments, I haven't appealed. I mean, I'm a Catholic too. I'm a very religious person. In fact, it's my day job. You'll notice in my arguments, I haven't appealed to religion once. Everything I've said is something that can be shared from a secular perspective. And so you don't have to be a person of faith to recognize the value of human life and the need to preserve it.
Absolutely. And there's a big section of the pro-life movement that are completely non-religious or agnostic. And they believe that all life is precious and all life should be protected. And, and from our perspective at Right to Life New Mexico, that's from conception till natural death. And I know a lot of people will say, when is life begin? And to me, scientifically going again, conception's the only point to me that we can draw that line, because that's when that's the beginning of the unique DNA, the new life has begun. Yeah. And so,
technically the gametes are alive before that, but they're not yet a single individual. It's when they come together and you have conception with the DNA strands merging to create a new individual. That's when the individual comes into existence, and that individual is alive from the very beginning.
So I know we're in a new phase in the pro-life movement here. It's been I think it's been 2 years now since the Dobbs decision and Roe v. Wade was overturned, and a lot of people get confused about what that really means. People, at least on our side of the pro-life side, realize that it doesn't mean abortion's illegal. It just means the states now have a say in what that means. So
the way I put it, because I've been doing pro-life work since the 1980s. And the way I always thought about it is once Roe falls, that means the battle can begin.
absolutely.
Because what the Supreme Court did in 1973 was took abortion off the table. So it ceased to be an issue that Americans could use their votes to materially affect. And so that led to a, process of trying to nibble around the edges, but the real impediment to making progress in protecting human life was Roe itself. And then once Roe falls, that's when the battle really begins. That's when we have to do a state-by-state education effort to educate people's consciences about what's going on here in order to bring about legislative change. So we're blessed that Roe is now fallen, and we are now in a state of affairs where we can do the real hard work of the pro-life movement of changing enough minds to be able to bring about effective legal protection for unborn children.
I know,
and it'll be a big messy fight, and it'll go on for decades, but at least it's begun. Yay.
absolutely. And I tell that to the board that I work for, that it took us 60 years to get into the position we're in now, and we're probably not going to get it completely fixed here this year. But we can take baby steps, and we can educate people and really change hearts and minds. So in my mind, there's two fronts that we can fight on. We need to fight on the legislative side, but we also need to fight on the educational side. If we really want to stop abortion, it is by changing hearts and minds. If we get to a point where the communities just won't have that anymore, then that's really the win. But in New Mexico here, like I stated before, we don't really have any laws right now. There's no law that says abortions have to be performed by doctors. There's no law that says they have to be performed in a healthcare facility. So those are kind of the two things that we're going to be going after first. Is that basically the ad campaign is, if it's healthcare, then it's healthcare. Because abortion almost always kills the baby, but sometimes it kills the mom. And so as a pro-life person, as a pro-life person, I care about the mom as well. And I want to make sure that she is safe as well. So we're going to be working on hopefully getting some legislation through that will require that abortions, if they're going to be performed, be in a healthcare facility by a healthcare provider. Because right now, like I said, there is no restrictions in our state currently. And that to me is just, it's a little bit sad. So
it's unconscionable.
But from the educational standpoint, we're doing things like this podcast. We're doing things, there's rallies and there's prayer meetings and things like that. But we really have to be able to get the message out in front of as many people as possible. And that's why we kind of brought it to the internet, because this is where people are now. And I really think that I think it will make a difference in the long run.
Well, this is a long game. The forces of darkness took a long time to get abortion to become the law of the land. Then it took pro-life forces a long time to get that undone. And it's going to take time for the complete reversal of abortion. But the good thing that is that there's an argument now that wasn't available to prior generations of pro-lifers. When Roe v. Wade was enacted in 1973, it was on the tail end of the 1960s, and all the people who were around at the time had grown up with abortion being illegal. And so they were never personally at threat from it. But now everyone's grown up in a period where abortion was the law of the land, and young people can be presented with the question, should your mom have been able to kill you? Doesn't matter whether you're a man, doesn't matter whether you're a woman, your mom could have killed you. Should you have had legal protection when you were unborn. And once it's put in personal terms, a lot of young people realize, yeah, that could have been me. And that shouldn't be. And we should protect unborn children. And so that's one of the actual positive signs now, because it's easier than it was in 1973 when people were just thinking about themselves and the sexual revolution and all that stuff and free sex and no consequences and everything. Now the situation has changed, and the dynamic is that could have been me, and it shouldn't be me, and therefore it shouldn't be anyone else either. And so we've got a powerful new way of presenting the message that wasn't available when Roe v. Wade happened.
That is very powerful. I've never thought of that argument. You know, it reminds me when I first took this job as the executive right to life, my daughter, who was just about to turn 9, asked me, well, what is right to life? And I told her, well, we're a pro-life organization. And she goes, well, what does that really mean? And I said, well, some people think it's okay to kill the baby in their mommy's stomach. And she goes, well, that's just stupid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a 9-year-old, and she gets the argument that that's a baby, and she's closer to it than I am. So I mean, I think that's a very powerful argument that all of us are here because our parents chose life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that way before Roe v. Wade.
And children can have really good insights on all this. There was a former pro-lifer who was originally a pro-abortion physician. Her name was Jean Garton. And she was still pro-abortion. She was one day preparing like a lecture, and she had a slide up of an aborted child. And her 6-year-old walked into the room and saw the slide. And the 6-year-old's first question was, who broke the baby? I mean, the child immediately realized something was desperately wrong here. And that led to her rethinking the issue. And it led to her becoming pro-life. And she even wrote a book called Who Broke the Baby? Children often have a clear grasp of this. In fact, the fact they're not too far from the womb helps them feel this personally and realize it. What happens is in their teenage years, hormones start cooking, and our society, unfortunately, is oversexed and doesn't give children the guidance and support they need when they're passing through the transition to adulthood. And so things can become very selfish, and things can become very, I just want to do what I want to do and not have any consequences. But as maturity comes around, the hormones from teenage years dissipate, and we settle into adulthood, and we're able to think about things more clearly. And being able to realize, yeah, that could have been me, and thank God it wasn't, but it shouldn't be anyone else either, can settle in. And praise God for the children who go through adolescence with proper support, and who don't have that hedonistic me atmosphere provided to them. They have a real benefit. But even if you don't have that benefit growing up, once you become an adult and you, as St. Paul said, put aside childish things and think like an adult, that could have been you, and it shouldn't have been you. And so it shouldn't have been anyone else either.
I know it's a big reason my wife and I homeschool, because I want her to be a kid as long as she can be a kid. And it is interesting to see other girls that are her age at her dance class, and they're not kids anymore, because they go to school and they're around. They have smartphones and they have all that kind of stuff. But I just think, she's almost 9, and when I was 9, I was eating dirt. I wasn't playing on an iPad. So I want kids to be kids as long as they can and maintain their innocence as long as they can, because she really does see the things that they're so clear to her. Like it's just wrong to kill a baby in the stomach. Like it just doesn't make any sense to her that anyone would even fathom that would be an okay thing. So I look at her and and I just see the best parts of the world. I really do. And it's been an honor. I mean, my life began when I became a father. And so I wish that for anybody who's able to, be able to have kids, because your life really does change, because it's not about you anymore. And my daughter, the doctors, my wife had a very hard time in the pregnancy. And she was on bed rest for a few months, and the doctors had even started to talk about abortion. And it was, basically just get out of here. That's not an option. And now my daughter, she's 9 years old. She's healthy. She's happy. But the fact that they run to I think they pull that abortion trigger way too fast, even when it comes to health of the mother. And I think that's sad, because my wife, she just laid down on bed rest for 3 months, and we got that baby as far as we could, and then she was delivered early.
Awesome. But good for you and your wife.
But I think, we're a good Catholic family, and we're raised in the faith, and we recognize, through our faith and through logic that, that was a life, and we wanted to protect that life. And it was my job to protect that life. And it's going to be my job to protect that life for my whole life. And so I do think that, men need to step up and be men about it, and, protect the innocent.
Awesome.
All right. So, all right. Well, sir, I really do appreciate you being here today. If people wanted to check you out, is there some place that they could go?
Yeah, there's 3 places I recommend. The first one is, as you mentioned, I'm the senior apologist at Catholic Answers. Our website is Catholic.com. We have tens of thousands of resources online for people for free, including pro-life resources. Also, my personal webpage is JimmyAkin.com. All you got to do to get there is spell my name. Jimmy is Jimmy with a Y. Akin is just like it sounds. AKIN. There are no E's, T's, or S's. If there were, you'd hear them when I say it, but you don't. It's just Akin. So if you go to JimmyAkin.com, you'll find my personal website, which is kind of a hub for everything I do. You also mentioned my podcast, Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Folks can find that at mysterious.fm. We look at lots of mysterious subjects of all different kinds from the twin perspectives of faith and reason. You mentioned our latest 2-parter on unicorns, and there was a surprising amount of stuff to say about unicorns, and I won't spoil it, but there are real unicorns. And so you may want to check those out. You can also go to my YouTube page, which is youtube.com/Jimmy Akin.
All right. Fantastic. And I definitely recommend Mysterious World. It's my favorite podcast. Listen to it every Friday. So, Jimmy, I really appreciate your time today. Like I said earlier, I'm a fan of yours. So you taking a little bit of time to meet with me today has been a great honor. So thank you very much.
The honor's all mine, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Again, I want to thank Jimmy for his time today. It was a great honor to have him on the show. I've been a fan of his for many years. Again, I want to remind you all to donate. Please, you can go to rtlcnm.org. Again, thank you for watching. My name is Sean Scherer, and this is the Right to Life New Mexico podcast.
And before we go, just one more reminder that if you like what you've watched, you can help me out by liking, commenting, and especially by subscribing. I'm trying to grow my channel, and I'd really appreciate your help. Thank you, and God bless you.